Welcome! For this video, we're going to be looking at different types of teaching strategies. For each one, we'll see when is the best time to use them, how they connect to learning theories, and look at some examples. But first, some food for thought. Have you ever wondered why college professors tend to utilize the lecture method as the primary instructional method? We'll answer that question in just a bit. We'll also be talking about things like group projects and why they're used and what students can learn from them. So, you're going to see that there are three main categories of teaching strategies. And I thought I'd start with a nice quote. Good teaching is 1/4 preparation and 3/4 theater. Now, I'm not sure I agree with the exact ratios, but the idea is sound that there is the part of teaching that is preparation, such as what we looked at with learning objectives, and then there's the part that is actually implementing your lessons and your instructional strategies. All right, we're going to start with expository approaches. It has an interesting definition. So this is when you are presenting information in pretty much the exact way that you want the students to remember or to learn it. Well, that is one of the things that lecturing does do. So you are being presented with the information like, hey, this is what I want you to know. There are lots of other expository approaches. Textbooks do the same thing. They are pretty self-explanatory and they provide you with everything you need to learn. Same thing with instructional tutorials. You can see there are lots of examples of expository approaches, even instructional videos, such as a video showing you the events of the Civil War. The expository approach does connect to the information processing memory model, which we've already looked at, the idea of how incoming information can eventually and hopefully become something that stays in your long-term memory through either rote or meaningful learning. All right, so there are different types of expository approaches, and as I already mentioned, lecturing is one of the prototypical examples for an expository approach. So I thought I'd start with the question of when do you use lecturing? When is it meant to, when is it the best fit for your classroom? You want to use lecturing when the content is brand new, when it's stuff that your students haven't heard of before, new individuals, new theories, new concepts, and or if it's a large amount of information. You also want to use lecturing when you have a large number of students, and especially if those students are in formal operations. So if you ask yourself, why a large number? Well, when you have a large group of students, it is difficult to do discussions. Discussion-oriented classes work best between 10 and 15 students. It can sometimes be hard to do hands-on when you have so many students. Also, students who are in formal operations are in the best cognitive situation to be able to learn from. They're most able to learn from a lecture. And then finally, when you need an organized structure. You know, studies have shown that when you present things in an organized way, students are more able to remember it and to recall it at test time. And oftentimes when you have, again, a vast quantity of information, it's most helpful if you can present it in a very organized way. This should explain why so many college courses really depend upon lecture, because we're often presenting new information, often in vast quantities, large classes, students in formal operations, and again, that organized structure is always helpful when you have a large amount of information. However, what can teachers do to lecture better? Because there are a lot of bad lecturers out there. It is not necessarily easy to give a good lecture, so let's look at some tips. One thing you can do is start with an advance organizer. So this is something that you do at the beginning of the lesson to either get the students to think about the content, to put things in context, or to get them to organize things or relate it to what they already know. Down below is a video showing just a brief example of one type of advance organizer.
How is a French school like or unlike the schools in your country?
Once you've established your learning objectives and generated some interest in your topic, many experts recommend presenting an advance organizer for your topic. An advance organizer is simply a tool to help focus students on what is to be learned.
Lachey said work. Do you think that we work at Garfield?
Yeah.
Do you think that they work in France? So it goes where, Lachey? Bo. What kind of work? Construction work? Handwriting.
Using advanced organizers brings out student knowledge of the topic to be studied, so they can relate the topic to their own experiences. It also sets a clear purpose for the lesson.
They would take the Venn diagram then on their own or in a group, depending on how we're set up that day, and then that's their organization.
So you can see an advanced organizer can help them connect it back to what they already know, or better organize or be prepared for what's coming up. What else can you do? You can find other ways to try to connect to what the students already know. You can give them examples. You can say, hands up, how many people can relate to this? Something like that. So here's one example for me. So I've been covering geography in homeschool with my 2nd grade daughter, and she loves animals. So one of the ways that I can make connections between different countries to her is by connecting them to the animals that she already knows, and then talking about what habitat each of these animals would need based upon their biology. So what does the thick fur of a snow leopard and their large paw pads and their big thick tail tell you about the environment in which they live? How are those big paws adaptive? Same thing for the large ears of the desert fennec fox, and so on. And then they can again connect to the characteristics of the geography to the animal aspects that they already know. What else can you do? Organization. Organization is so key to a lecture. One of the hardest things to pay attention to and to learn from is a disorganized lecture. Visual aids are also essential, whether it is something that you are holding up for the students to look at, whether it is pictures on your PowerPoint or videos. Visual aids certainly help. This is just a silly cartoon just reminding us that it doesn't always have to be a photograph on a PowerPoint. It's also nice to bring in a hands-on type of object for a visual aid when you can. Signals to draw attention. So if you are just lecturing from start to finish, it is hard for students to know what part of that information is important and what do I need to pay attention to. So signals could be putting something in a bold font, underlining it, using your voice differently when you reach that point, repeating something over and over, as well as finding a good way to make transitions from one subject or one area to the next. All of that will help to focus students' attention and help them follow along. What else can you do? Make sure that you are clear in your explanations, clear in your purpose. This will certainly help the students with retention and understanding. And obviously enthusiasm. You don't want to be dry and dull and monotone. You want to be passionate and excited and interesting so the students will want to pay attention. I love this quote. Enthusiasm is the most important thing in life. All right, it may not be the most important, but obviously enthusiasm is essential in the classroom. All right, so we've looked at lecturing. There are other types of expository approaches. One is called direct instruction. It has other names too. You might hear it called active teaching or explicit teaching. This works best when you are teaching a skill. Okay, so a skill like science, math, vocabulary, grammar, phonics. So some skills you might need to use an expository approach to teach them. And it actually is a combination of an expository approach as well as a hands-on approach. Let's take a look at how it works. You start off by doing some sort of a review, which is always good to start with. Correct any misconceptions the students might have about, how to do this particular skill or what they might know about it. That might even be going over their homework. Provide them with their instructional goals. What is it you want them to get out of this lesson? Present the new content. So show them how to solve a logarithm. Show them how to balance a chemical equation. Then you use guided practice, where as the teacher, you are showing them on the board or you're in some way guiding them while they also practice it at the same time at the desk. So both the teacher and the students are working together, think of zone of proximal development and scaffolding. So this is where the teacher is providing active scaffolding or guidance while the students are practicing the new skill. Then you give some sort of an assessment. It could be a thumbs up or thumbs down if you got it right. It could be going around to the table and looking at their work. Give them feedback. Then they have independent practice to see whether or not they've mastered it. And yes, that could be homework, but more typically that is something that they're doing in the class, and then you might collect it or go around and look at it. So again, that's direct instruction. This part here is more of the expository part. This part here is a bit more of the hands-on part. And then usually at the end, the last thing you're going to do is eventually assess, review, and move on. You can also use technology, as we have certainly seen in this past year in 2020 with an expository approach. And I have provided some examples of those, and I'm sure you've seen a variety of different ways that instructors have attempted to provide an expository lesson using technology, some better than others, some more effective than others. All right, so that's the expository approach. Now, I did leave out things like textbooks, instructional videos, things like that that don't really require much in the way of description. For hands-on approaches, what we're looking at here is when the students are actively working with content. So in the expository approach, they're more watching, listening, reading. In the hands-on approach, they're doing something, right? They're working with course content. Hopefully, this reminds you of Jean Piaget and his idea of constructivism, and that the way we learn is by working hands-on, working actively or interacting with objects in our environment. I thought it related also to this proverb, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand, showing the value of each of these different learning modalities. So for hands-on approaches, there are a variety of different ones you can use. One is called discovery learning. So this is where the students are really interacting with content and learning something on their own. They're discovering or making new mental schemas on their own. There are two types. There's pure discovery. With pure discovery, the teacher really doesn't give a whole lot of guidance. The student is kind of doing things on their own and seeing what they can discover on their own. One of the best examples of this is often the egg drop. So let me show you a video to remind you about the egg drop. So you can see they're using a variety of materials. They take an egg to put inside those materials, and they're going to drop it from a high place and see whose invention keeps the egg from busting. Now, pure discovery and things like the egg drop are a lot of fun, but one of the drawbacks can be is students don't often retain what the message is. For instance, I've participated in a lot of egg drops. I'm not sure I really recall what the best idea was. I'm not sure that I really got the message as clearly as perhaps I should have, at least when I was a kid. The other type of discovery learning that's a bit more effective is called guided discovery. So here the teacher is more involved. They're providing a framework, they're providing organization and assistance, they're going around and guiding, and at the end they're going to do some sort of a wrap-up. They're going to be making sure, they're going to be scaffolding to make sure that students are working in the right direction. And there are lots of ways you can do that. So here I thought that this was a cute idea. So this is a local school near me. So here you have a teacher giving the students instructions for a camp-themed pretend play that they had in their classroom. They had things to match animal tracks, to read about camping, to learn about insects in the sensory bin. So it's very much discovery learning, but she's starting off going through and showing them all how to use it and what to do with it. Here's another one. Students were making ice cream in this first example, I think in this one here, and silly putty in the other, and learning the science behind it. Here's another one out of Columbus City Schools where the students are learning how to plant crops and help them grow and what to do with them, again with the guidance of their teacher. And here's a short video, showing the guided discovery method in a classroom.
You have a lot of knowledge right now about static electricity. What I'm going to be giving you are some materials that you will be working with a partner to use. How could we use these? Because in a minute you're going to get to try these. But how are we going to use them? Matt?
Maybe try rubbing them together.
With that in mind, I need to create a chart that will show us our results. The students are constructing meaning by actually using these materials in a way that they have chosen. So I haven't determined how they're going to use the materials and told them exactly what to do, because I want them to err in what they're doing. I want them to see that they've tested or tried something and it doesn't work, because that's really when they learn and they can apply that to other situations. I think that if you can make a connection to the real world and what they're doing, anytime that you are experimenting, if the students can construct meaning, they're able to then apply that to a task that they may have. They may need to fix their bike, or they may need to do something with a toy at home, but they if I tell them how to do it, it's not likely they're going to remember it later.
And I love that point of view, the idea of she wants them to make mistakes because they're going to learn from those mistakes, and that's how they're going to create a better and a deeper understanding. All right, another type of hands-on approach is seat work. And again, that doesn't sound incredibly exciting, but it does depend upon what the task is. But this is any sort of independent work that the student is doing at his or her desk. And again, it could be a simple worksheet, or it could be something very interesting and hands-on. It should follow the lesson, and it should also include some sort of supervised practice. This should not be the main form of instruction, though. It shouldn't just simply be that students are doing things alone at their desk and the teacher's just sitting there, because there does need to be not only the hands-on component from the teacher, but there does need to be more than that for the students to truly make meaning out of it. Homework is one type of hands-on approach. Homework is typically simply where the students are practicing material learned in class. And again, if you think about what you know from the zone of proximal development, it has to be something that students are capable of doing on their own at home. You can't always be assured that there is going to be parental assistance. Now, sometimes you might hope for that, and you might be giving them something within their zone, assuming that parents are going to be able to help, but you want to keep that in mind. All right, speaking of homework, what can teachers do to make homework better, to improve its effectiveness? Because again, I've seen a lot of busy work homework out there. You don't want to be giving them so much that they feel like these kids here in this cartoon. You want to think about the quantity and the quality of the homework you're giving. To truly be effective, homework should have clear instructions. So the students, when they get home and they no longer have you in front of them, they should be able to easily know what is it they're supposed to do. Obviously, for this cat here, those instructions were quite unclear. It should be understandable. You don't want them to get home and so they can read the instructions, but they still don't know how to do it because perhaps they don't have the skill level yet. Perhaps they just simply haven't reached that, or they just don't know what to do. I love this one. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your favorite color of the alphabet? What? That makes no sense. And it should be checked for accuracy. It should not be an empty exercise that they go home and they work on it and then nothing is ever done with it. So even if you just check it for completion, if you go over the answers in class and use it as a review, in some way it should be checked, because one of the whole points of homework, again, is not an empty exercise, but to assess for understanding and practice to assist with learning. Here's a quick video to talk a little bit about homework.
Homework is another way to provide guided practice for your students.
Next one. Spencer. 1/2 thumbs up or down. Go. I can't believe you guys are so wonderful. Next one. Katrina. Thumbs up or down? Also, you look confused. Where do you want to put it? Up or down? Good job for you. It is up. Okay. My goal for homework, it might be different things. One of them, especially for math for me, is that it's practice for the kids. I don't keep a grade on it. I keep a record of if they did well
if they did okay or if they really needed help, so I can see at a glance which ones of my kids I need to pull. But I never ever give homework that isn't necessary. It always has a meaning to it.
A well-designed homework assignment reinforces the concepts or skills taught in school, helps keep parents informed about what their children are learning, and establishes good study habits.
I like a couple of points from that video. First of all, you can see one of the ways that she's using it to preface a lesson and to review and see what the students know. So she'll ask a question, ask the student what they got on it. Everyone gives a thumbs up or down if that's what they got too, and she can kind of see at a glance how the students did. And she talks about never giving a homework unless it is going to be helpful or beneficial. Another type of hands-on approach is an authentic activity. That is kind of a broad category. It can be used in different ways, but it's basically some sort of an activity that is done within a real-world context. It could be seat work, it could be homework, it also could be group work. But here for hands-on, we're simply looking at the individual working with objects. So an authentic activity, it is kind of like the difference between giving your students a worksheet to solve problems or having them do something that is more like what a chemist may do in science. Or applying a math problem to a real world problem. Like, okay, so you have to buy carpet for this house. Here is the blueprints of the house. How much carpet do you need? Here's some examples. So here we have Columbus City Schools, where they have the students outside working with volunteer work with some other groups to build what they call teaching gardens. It's a school garden program, very hands-on application of what they've learned in biology about plants. Here we have another one in Columbus City Schools where they're playing with Play-Doh and straws to recreate geometric shapes. And I love how they put this. It says they forgot to do math, the idea that they're having so much fun doing this hands-on learning that they don't even realize that they are doing geometry or math. Here we have some at, again, the school that is in my neighborhood. So here we have Thanksgiving festivities where they tried to do some hands-on, authentic, real-life kinds of things related to that historical time period. They did candle making, early American games. They made fried bread, a Thanksgiving feast. I do have to point out right there is my daughter, and her dad was the principal at the time, so there he is. And then here we have for Thanksgiving where they did books, coloring, headdress making, and butter churning. And here's another one where they had people come in with the older students and teach them about blacksmiths, cabinet makers, and all sorts of colonial life. All right, now we are at our last category, which is the interactive approach. This is going to be where I hit pause, and we will pick this up in part 2, so that way our videos aren't getting too long. So I'll see you next time, and we're going to cover interactive approaches.